So in the spring of 2017, our family was invited to come down and do a replant of Mayflower Church, which is now called Wellspring. And I remember early on, right, before I arrived, there was this person who offered an invitation to the small church that was here. And that small church had gotten to the point where they were wondering, well, we have to close our doors. And they were given an invitation, the congregation was gathered, and the church planter, the person sort of saying, hey, will you guys consider this? Offered them an analogy. He said this: your church is a field, and God is in one corner and he's in a bulldozer. And you guys are in the other corner, and you have the keys to the bulldozer. And God reaches out his hands, says to you, will you give God the keys to the bulldozer so he can do what he wants with the field? And they had this choice. Do we walk across the field and put the keys in God's hands, or we just keep doing our own thing? And you need to kind of enter into the imagination of the people, the life of the people. They'd invested in this place, some of them for over 50 years. Most of them over 10, many over 20 years. They loved this place. They'd gotten used to this place. And would they give over this place they loved back into the hands of God for him to do what he wanted? Many of these people were in their 70s. And this group of unbelievably faithful people said, all right, God, here you go. And at that moment, giving over control to God, they initiated this profound change in this place. Around that time, our family was invited to do a church plant within this group of 40 to 50, 70-year-olds. And we saw God move in crazy ways. I remember for one of those Sundays, I was coming down to do like a Sunday morning so they could see this is gonna kind of what it's gonna feel like. And I had a friend who was coming from San Jose to lead worship. And I was like, all right, this will give the church here a sense of where we're going. And on the Thursday before that Sunday morning worship, my friend was mountain biking in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And a bee flew into his mouth. He flipped over the handlebars, landed on his head, ended up in the ER, called me on Thursday and is like, yo, there's no way I can lead worship on Sunday. I have a concussion. I have my panic attack at that moment, because what am I gonna do, play a CD? About an hour later, I get a call from John and Amy, people I had never met in my life, and they say, hey, we're wondering, do you need any help with worship? I was like, who are you? I'd never talked to them before, and I was like, are you free on Sunday? John and Amy come that Sunday, and they're just unbelievable people. Gifted worship leaders. And I was like, hey, when I come here, when we start this church plant, will you be with us for a bit? And I was like, could you commit to 4 months? That would be huge. And they said, yeah, we'll do that. That same weekend, early in the week, I called two friends that I had been at a church with a few years back, and I was like, hey, I was praying and I just wondered, would you be interested if I come here to do this church plant? Would you be willing to support and join us on the ground? And they're like, let me think about it. I get a call back. They say, hey, we had a backpacking trip scheduled this weekend. We're in Nevada. How about this? We'll drive down for this Sunday service. And after that Sunday service, they said, hey, if you move down here, we will relocate our whole life to join you on this church plant. There was another family up in Washington, a family of 5, who when we said, hey, we're moving down to do this church plant, they said, all right, we are going to relocate our entire life, our family of 5. We're going to move out of our house. We're going to find new jobs, and we're going to join you to do this church plant. It was just this small group of people that we started meeting in this place. And within 9 months, we did a name change, right, from Mayflower to Wellspring. I remember early on, we had this Sunday morning where I asked a few people, hey, can I get some help moving stuff around, right? Because stuff had accumulated in the building over time. I was like, can I get a couple guys just to help me carry stuff? And I remember after service, some older women came up to me and they were weeping. And I was like, oh man, what did I do now? And they looked at me and they said, do you know how many years it has been since we could make an announcement to get help from people to move things in this building? I remember when we did our launch that first year, the building was packed. And I remember one of the elders saying to me, do you know how long it has been since this place was full for a Sunday morning service and not just for a funeral? I remember elders, people that had been in this church for 20, 30 years, that had been praying decade after decade. They had been praying for God to bring new life. And I remember watching them during services, just weeping in the aisles as they saw God bring new life to this place. God has been doing this resurrection here at Wellspring. Right now, through 2 years, like we were growing, it was exciting. And then we had a global pandemic. And even there, right, we met outside for 6 months between our 2 buildings. And it was like this freezing Arctic wind tunnel. And yet, you had young families. You had elderly folks. You had this group of people, whether it was freezing or whether the sun was in their eyes, they would sit there morning after morning, worshiping Jesus on Sundays. And it kind of actually solidified us in a way. And at every stage, God provided people to lead ministries, right? Half our staff team, more than half of it is bivocational. Almost all of our leaders, right, are people that God brings in, military people for a season, folks that have relocated from Silicon Valley down to PG from all over the world. God has brought people and they use their gifts, shaped in their stories by God, to transform this place so that it looks more like heaven than earth, so that it is shaped by Jesus' will and not ours. And that's where we're at in this season, leaning into what is God going to do next, living into the wonder of God's surprising presence as He brings new people and shapes us. And I guess I just wonder what your role is to play in this unfolding story, right? Time and again, God has brought people into our midst, shaped in their stories. And I guess I just wonder what your role is, what gifts you bring, what resources and assets you bring to God's kingdom in this place. Wellspring's story is unfolding. I invite you to be a part.